Kindness. It's one of those virtues that sounds soft on the surface, right? But I think it's actually one of the hardest things to live by. Because kindness isn't just being nice when you're in a good mood or on your own time. It's not just smiling or holding the door open for somebody or saying polite things necessarily. Real kindness shows up when you're tired or you're hurt and you've been done wrong, but instead you're choosing not to pass your pain forward. Kindness is restraint, it's patience, it's choosing understandings over your ego. It's realizing that everyone you meet is fighting something that you will probably never see. The angry guy at work, the quiet friend who never opens up, the person who snapped at you for no reason. You will never know what somebody carried into that room today. You have no clue if they walked in after an argument that they never got closure from. You have no idea if they slept in their car. You don't know if they're holding grief that they haven't quite learned how to name yet. And some people are carrying childhood wounds that still feel fresh. Some people are carrying expectations that they can't live up to. Some are carrying shame, regret, or a version of themselves that they're trying to escape. And the scary part is, most of them are smiling. And that's why kindness matters so much, especially in the moments where it feels unnecessary. Because sometimes a small interaction isn't so small to them. Sometimes the way you speak, the patience you show, or the grace you give is the only gentle thing that they have experienced all day. You might just be a passing moment in their life, but that moment could decide whether they keep going with hope or with bitterness. And you'll never know which one it was. Here's the part no one really tells you. Being kind doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes kindness means not defending yourself, even when you could. Sometimes it means staying gentle when you're misunderstood. It could even mean loving people who don't know how to love you back. And yes, it hurts. But kindness isn't weakness. It's a strength that doesn't need to prove itself. I'll be honest, this is a virtue I struggle with a lot. Not because I don't believe in it, but because life has a way of hardening you if you allow it to. And there were seasons where I felt like being kind meant being weak, where being patient felt like letting people walk all over me, where showing grace felt unfair because nobody was giving it back to me. I've walked into rooms already exhausted, already defensive, already assuming that I'd have to protect myself. And in those moments, I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't kind either. I was short, I was distant, I was closed off, and looking back, I can see how much of that came from my own hurt and my own insecurities. I was carrying pain I hadn't dealt with yet, frustration that I didn't know how to express, and a version of myself that was tired of always being the understanding one. So instead of extending grace, I started withholding it. And instead of listening, I started reacting. And instead of seeing people for who they were, I started seeing them as obstacles. And what changed wasn't some big dramatic moment, it never is. It was realizing how often I needed the very thing that I refused to give up. I needed patience when I was falling apart quietly. I needed kindness when I didn't deserve it. I needed someone to look at me and not reduce me to my worst day. And once I saw that in myself, I couldn't unsee it in other people. I started noticing how often people are fighting battles in silence, how anger is usually just pain wearing armor, how most people don't actually want to be difficult. They're just overwhelmed. And that doesn't mean we should let people hurt us. It doesn't mean we should ignore our own boundaries. It just means we stop assuming the worst by default. Because the truth is, every time I choose compassion instead of pride, every time I choose patience instead of control, every time I choose kindness instead of being right, I walked away feeling lighter. Not because I fixed them, but because I didn't add more weight to the world. And I'm still learning, I'm still catching myself when I snap, still apologizing when I mess up and miss the mark. But this virtue keeps pulling me back to something simple. Be the person you would have needed on your hardest day. And this is where the control really hits, because every virtue exists to fight something darker. The deadly sin tied to this virtue is wrath. As we know, wrath isn't just anger. It's unresolved pain that turns outward. It's when frustration stops being felt and starts being fired. Wrath shows up when your patience runs out, when empathy feels like an option, or when we decide that our own hurt gives us permission to hurt people back. And I've seen it in myself many times. Not in explosions, I guess, but in tone, in silence, in the way I'd shut down instead of softening, in the way I'd assume intent instead of asking questions. Wrath doesn't always yell at you. Sometimes it'll withdraw quietly. Sometimes it'll judge you quietly. Sometimes it'll slowly keep score in the background. And the scary part is how justified it really feels. You tell yourself, oh, well, I've been through enough, so I don't owe it to anyone. Or they should know better. But wrath doesn't protect you. It isolates you. It creates your walls so high where bridges could have been. It turns misunderstandings into permanent distance. And slowly, it trains your heart to respond with defense instead of discernment. And that's why this virtue matters so much. Because every moment that you choose patience over reaction, or kindness over control, grace over retaliation, you're interrupting wrath in real time. You're breaking that cycle instead of continuing it. And that creates discipline. It takes great strength to hit the pause button every once in a while. It takes courage to stay gentle in a world that rewards the hardness. And it takes real maturity to respond with compassion when anger would be so much easier. Kindness isn't about being perfect. I want you to look at it like this. It's about being intentional, about noticing when wrath starts knocking on the door and choosing to answer with something better. This is the part I struggle with the most. We talk a lot about being kind to others, but we're so brutal with ourselves. We replay mistakes. We insult our own progress. We expect perfection. But kindness towards yourself is letting the growth be messy. It's forgiving the version of yourself that didn't know any better. It's resting without guilt. You deserve the same grace that you give everybody else. And I'd like to make this clear. Being kind to yourself isn't pretending that everything is okay. It's about refusing to abandon yourself when things aren't. And for a long time I thought being hard on myself was discipline. I thought if I criticized myself enough, I'd finally become better or more successful. But all it really did was make me exhausted and bitter towards my own reflection. And there's a difference between accountability and cruelty. And I crossed that line so many more times than I can even count. Kindness to yourself looks like meeting your flaws without panic. Like admitting, yes, I did mess up, without following it with and that's why I'm such a failure, you know? It's learning how to sit with disappointment without turning it into your whole identity. And some days, kindness is even just pushing yourself. Other days, it could be giving yourself permission to stop pushing. And knowing which one you need takes a lot of honesty and strength. It's choosing not to numb yourself just to get through the night. It's choosing to feel what hurts instead of bearing it and go down. It's understanding that healing isn't linear and neither is becoming better. Kindness to yourself is staying when it would be easier to check out. It's recognizing that the voice in your head wasn't born there. It was learned. And just because you learned it doesn't mean you have to keep listening to it. You are not behind because you're still struggling. You're not weak because some days hit harder than others. And you're not broken for needing time. Sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is talk to yourself the way that you would talk to somebody else that you love. Because growth doesn't come from self-destruction, it comes from self-respect. And choosing kindness towards yourself, especially when you're feeling undeserving, might be the most powerful form of discipline there is. Thank you, stay rolly.